My man Joe Haden is currently under contract, but this is the final year of his deal, right? Currently has a $15 million cap hit, but his agent Drew Rosenhaus, Adam Schefter, everybody has confirmed it that he has officially reached out to the Steelers about a contract extension. And obviously, as y'all can imagine, that got people talking, right? Because we had James Washington a couple days ago say he wants to get traded. We know TJ Watt's situation and his contract, whether the Steelers are going to pay him more or not, that's going on. So then you get this with Joe Haden and his team, and it just kind of added to it right there. But my initial thoughts on it, I can understand where Joe is coming from. He said that he wants to finish his career here, and I do believe him. Like Joe was like me in terms of like when we got here, bro, we fell in love with it. Like you talk to Joe and ask him, bro, how you feel about Pittsburgh? Like, he's going to light up and tell you, I absolutely love it here. And that's how we feel. And that's ultimately why when we got here, it was like, yo, we want to stay as long as we can. So with Joe's been playing at a crazy high level, right? He's been consistent. He's been steady. He hasn't had any off-field issues. I mean, you know what you're getting with Joe. Since he's gotten here, man, he's been a breath of fresh air for our secondary. So from his perspective, absolutely, man, you want to go into this season not with it just being the final year of that contract. You want a little bit more job security, right? A little bit more reassurance that if something were to happen this season, that they're still going to have your back next season, right? Totally different if you're under contract. Then they can just kind of hit you with the side. Like, I didn't see it. You know, I don't really know you like that.
Yeah.
So from Joe's perspective, I could definitely understand it. Now, if you're the Steelers, this is kind of dicey because Joe just turned 32. We do feel like, I won't say that he took a crazy step back last year, but we do feel like we know he's starting to get on the back end of it, right? We don't think that he's on the front end where he's going to have another 5 years with us. Like, we're looking a couple years tops, right? So if you're the Steelers, you have to ask yourself, where do you see this team next year? Where do you see this team in 2 years? Do you see this team still with Ben, still as a contender? Or is it this is the last go around, hard reset next year? All of those things dictate how you view this Joe Haden extension, whether you do it or not. Because if you view it as this is our last chance, it's the last window, we're not going to carry anything going into 2022 season and so forth, well, then you don't extend Joe. If anything, you try to figure out a deal to go get that man out of Jacksonville, right? CJ Henderson. If you're going to really go for, all right, we want to get us a corner and keep him, right? Then you would go that direction, right? But if you're not, right, say you feel like, man, Ben can stay here. You think that, man, we got the pieces in place that, okay, even if Ben were to leave, we think whether it's Haskins or Mason, we're very confident in this group. Well, then sure, you go ahead, give him a 2 to 3 year extension, just so that way you have a little bit of a buffer in place while you're going with that changeover, right? While you're still maintaining a competitive balance, though. And it doesn't kill you cap-wise, as long as it's not that $15 million cap hit. That definitely can't be there going forward. So that's kind of how I view it right there. But I can see both sides in terms of why they would if you're Joe and why you might decide not to if you're the Steelers.
No, definitely. I feel like the Steelers have way more leverage in this situation.
100%.
Because Joe, like you said, 32 years old. It's not very common once a cornerback hits 30 to still be that elite player that they were. Mm-hmm. Although there are outliers. Here's what I will say, because I did some research on cornerbacks that did sustain some pretty solid play into their 30s.
Mm-hmm.
These are like Hall of Famers and Pro Bowl, All-Pro type cornerbacks. If we want to say like Joe is, I don't want to say he's on that level because we're talking like Charles Woodson, Champ Bailey, those type of dudes. But what we can say is he's a professional.
Mm-hmm.
He has been a 3-time Pro Bowler.
Definitely has.
I don't know how his career is exactly going to finish out, but Steelers Hall of Honor, he'll be recognized in that type of vein. As long as he hasn't lost a step, he still has his speed, still has his athleticism, and loves the game, is committed to it, I don't see why he still can't be a solid corner, at least cornerback 2 for a contending team. Goes back to the contract numbers, though, because $15 million cap hit, no way in hell.
And that's not contract 2 money, right?
What's the number?
Corner
because
2 money,
I wouldn't feel comfortable anything over $5 or $6 million. I would be really comfortable with $3 or $4 million.
Now, does
Joe want that?
Because this is where it becomes dicey. Remember, he just did a 2-year extension where it paid him $11 million per year. To ask Joe to go from 11 per year to talking about 3 per year, but you're still going to require him to play the same amount of snaps. It's not like if he go from being corner number 1 to corner number 2, he's playing any less.
No, definitely.
He's still going to have.
Did you see that interview at all? He said he's not going to switch to safety,
Right.
and he's not going to do nickel cornerback. So if he hits a point where he doesn't think he could be on the outside, he's just going to retire.
Right. Because for him to go to safety, when we talk, because people brought up, well, Charles Woodson, he went to safety. Charles Woodson is about 3 inches taller and about 20 pounds heavier than Joe Haden is. So even though Joe is athletic enough and Joe is smart enough, Joe size-wise, that is drastically different when you're talking about going in there and tackle, playing this box essentially, like what we talk about with Edmonds, we talk about Minka. Like, you're going to have a ton more tackling that you're going to have to do as a safety compared to being a corner. Not every corner wants to do that. Like, you tackling as a corner compared to you having to tackle as a safety are just night and day in terms of the responsibility. So I could easily understand that. And for Joe, when you just talk about transitioning to other positions, man, mentally, you're essentially accepting the fact that my skills have diminished. Now, to do that, mentally, that's going to take you to a different place, because you always got to go out there with the mindset that I have no weakness. I don't care what you think it is. I have no weakness, or you can't exploit that weakness. But for you to admit to yourself that, all right, I can't get it done out here, I do got to switch, I feel like that messes with you as well. And that could ultimately hurt your performance on the field. So I could easily understand why Joe would take that approach. But with that information, it makes it dicier when you're talking about that extension, because he's not going to be flexible in terms of switching positions now.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that kind of like puts that all to bed when he says that.
What I'm curious about, though, is he going to be flexible with the number? Because if he's the one coming out with this information saying, I want an extension with the Steelers, I want to retire as a Steeler, then he's basically saying it's going to have to be a team-friendly deal, probably.
In a sense, team-friendly, but not disrespectful. When you go to a man that just got paid $11 million and you say $3 million, team, that looks more like you're disrespecting me.
This is why the Steelers have the leverage, though, because we have him on this 32-year-old, he's going to be 32 in this season, which is good for us. Do we want him at 33, 34 then? Because this season, I don't think it'd be a surprise if he ends up having like 5 interceptions.
Okay.
It's more of a surprise the older that he gets, that he's having these elite type of seasons.
But when I think of the full context of what is your confidence level in the Steelers drafting cornerbacks?
That's a good point too.
The best secondary players that we've essentially have gotten in the recent recent history have been guys we've acquired from elsewhere. We talk about Minka. We talk about Joe. Like, those guys, that they weren't homegrown. Even when we're talking about going to get another corner, we talk about that because we typically don't draft well at cornerback. So even though the Steelers have leverage, I still feel like if you're the Steelers, you're not just willing to bet the house on Cam Sutton, James Pierre, and that group going forward.
We got to see this year, but that's why this is perfect, because we can see this year.
But the problem is this. Joe is trying to get this negotiation done on the front end. Dudes don't want to play on the contract year. So you don't have that. If you're the Steelers, when you're talking about, oh, you want to wait this season out.
Oh, you think Joe could hold out?
I don't think he will. We know who his agent is, though. So, all right, y'all keep laughing. All right, we know who his agent is. That's all I'm saying. So with that, the timing of it puts a lot more pressure on the situation, because if it was like how you were saying, where they could just simply wait to see how James Pierre looks, wait to see how Cam Sutton looks, and you could wait to see how Ben look, and then from there you could decide, well, yeah, you know what, we'll extend you, Joe. Yeah, we'll give you the money now. But the problem is, this is the contract year. At the end of the year, he's an unrestricted free agent. That's a different conversation. Once you have to endure playing on that contract year, shoot, for all that, you might as well go test the market, because you've earned that right. You've already survived the risk. So it doesn't benefit Joe to do that.
Yeah.
But from the Steelers side, it benefits them to take their time with it. But if it gets to the point and Joe says he's disgruntled or he has an issue with this, now we're stuck in a situation, right? Because now we're going to be forced to see Cam Sutton, James Pierre, and who else you want to throw out there?
I'm leaning Mark Gilbert right now. Although he wouldn't be the slot guy necessarily. So I guess Brooks.
And he hasn't been practicing, right? So you can see the situation of how the Steelers have leverage, but Joe got a little bit as well, man.
If he's willing to hold out.
Right. I don't think
we never caught that vibe.
Yeah,
That's the thing. With him saying, I want to retire Steeler. I love it here. Mm-hmm. TJ's first. I'm willing to wait and everything. Yeah. Which is funny, though, because literally the day after that article drops, Here's what I will say. Who knows when he actually did that interview, but still, you had to kind of know the timing of when the article was going to drop, and then all of a sudden the next day, Drew Rosenhaus has reached out to the Steelers on behalf of Joe Haden for an extension.
Trust me, when Drew reached out, man.
He said it, and I saw the interview too. 3 times in an interview, they asked him about the contract. He said each time, TJ's the main priority. TJ's got to get his first. TJ, this and that. But then he said it 3 times every time his contract was brought up.
But then, like you said, the report comes out, you're requesting an extension.
And TJ hasn't gotten his deal.
Exactly. And TJ still isn't even practicing just yet, right? I know you go, oh, he's out there at practice. We already broke that down. Of you being there practicing, you practicing are 2 different things, man.
I'm good with us signing him to an extension. 2 to 3 years. I don't know if there's an option.
Now, are you good with it if it's on the front end of this season, though?
What do you mean?
Like they right now, have to do this deal before the first game, before they go to Buffalo.
Oh yeah, I'm 100% fine with it. I'm more concerned about the number though.
Okay,
if the number's 3 or 4 million in those additional years, then 100%. That's good with me.
I just see 0 chance that Joe is going to sign for $3 million and still be asked to be cornerback number 2. That's gonna be less than what Cam Sutton is making.
4 or 5 million, maybe.
Bare minimum. Like if I'm Joe, it has to be 5 bare minimum, bro. Because you're gonna, it's not like with Mark Ingram, right? Or see, with Melvin Ingram is different because here he's not, even though he's competing for a starting spot, he's not forced to play starting snaps, right? We're not asking him to play 100% of the snaps. We're saying, hey, if somebody gets hurt, you can be a starter. But either way, you're gonna be rotating in some capacity with Alex Highsmith, regardless of whoever wins. Both of y'all gonna see action. So Melvin taking a little bit less makes sense because he's gonna be asked to do less. Now, if we were asking Melvin to come here and start and play 70 snaps every game for 17 games.
We might be.
No, barring injury, we not. And TJ, don't you do that now. Don't you do that today. We don't want that. Nope. Fingers crossed. Only positive thoughts.
This might be the best contract of all time. Yes. We just signed Melvin Ingram too.
You know what's happened then? Melvin gonna hit by week 6 and be like, hey, look, bro, y'all gonna need to renegotiate this. Y'all get overworked. I'm telling you, that's how it goes, man. Like, that's how it is. Y'all be over here steal away. He could be like, bro, I ain't for no steal away. Nah, man. Y'all gonna pay me. I'm telling you. Who did the boy in Philadelphia did it last year. Oh man, Jason Peters, right? So Jason Peters had came back and because Philly had their O-line was banged up. He had just retired. He basically said, look, I'm only coming back.
Policy.
Right. He was like, I'll come back, but he wanted him to play like guard. I think he was coming back for. So the contract reflected that. It was like, I think, $5 or $6 million. Play guard. Injuries happened. They're like, we want you to play left tackle now.
I don't know what happened. Did he retire again or something?
No, but they made him like pay more money. He's like, yo, you gotta pay me more.
Who's that? Vontae Davis just retired at halftime.
But no, they essentially like he was like, look, if you want to play left tackle, you're gonna need to pay me a lot more because you paid me to be a guard, not to be a starting left tackle. And literally, that's how it went down. I want to say Philly did end up paying him, and ultimately it got settled because they didn't have any leverage though. They were all banged up on the front. And by him having to switch to left tackle, it was like, yo, you're going to pay me tackle money then. So that's the only thing when you're talking about Joe, when you talk about Melvin, asking dudes like that, man, to play that level snaps that and still have the expectations from him as well. It's not like we'll pay Joe $3 million and all of a sudden it's like, oh, Joe, you can slack up over there. It's all right. Nah, we still going to expect Joe to look like Joe.
The thing with Melvin, though, this is off topic and everything, but if he did ball out and like played a full season, he could break the bank again potentially.
Oh, he will.
Because older edge rushers still get paid.
Absolutely.
And can still produce like that. Whereas corners, it's a lot harder.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else with Joe. Well, here's the thing I thought of. What will be his market this offseason?
Joe?
Around the league.
It just depends on how the season goes. If he was hitting the market right now, I think that he would have easily been picked up earlier on.
Because Steven Nelson got $3 million.
Yeah, but Steven, number one, pedigree wise, wasn't a top. What Joe was 6th, 7th overall. Steven wasn't that. You know, and then when you talk about all pros, Pro Bowls, longevity, the productivity, Steven hasn't done it to nowhere near the amount of time that Joe has done it. So that's why when we're bringing up Steven, comparing him to Joe, if they were both on the market right now, I don't think it's apples to apples. I think that's slightly different just because Joe is more of a proven commodity. With Steven, we saw one really good year from him in Kansas City. But even with that, it was varying reports, right? Oh, he was the highest targeted or the most targeted corner. But he had all these picks, but he was the most targeted corner. So you're kind of in that little bit of a dicey situation. played really well his first year here, right? Then kind of came back down to earth a little bit that second year. It wasn't a crazy drop, but we definitely noticed it was a little bit different. With Joe is always, he's going to give you that 8, 9-ish. He's flirting in that range every year. And I think that's the difference of why if Joe would have been out there unrestricted, he would go out there and still get good money.
Okay. So I thought of Steven Nelson because do you think it was that much of a difference between their play, though, last year?
But this is my thing. It doesn't have to be that much of a difference. But when we're talking about a guy that you know for a fact is going to give you that every single year, whereas with Steven, it's going to be interesting to see what he looks like in Philly.
You're saying, if anything, it's more based off reputation.
Right.
But then the thing, though...
But he's proven, though. Joe, can we name a season where we're like, with Joe, we were scared of it. We didn't think it was going to look like that. Whereas with Steven early on, he wasn't seeing a lot of opportunity in Kansas City. It was different for him there.
I just think it would be interesting because Richard Sherman's also a different case because he was hurt last year. I think he's a year older than Joe Haden.
Yeah, and he's not as athletic as Joe either.
I'm just wondering because Joe would be pretty unique then in this case if he hit the market because what other corners are we really... I'm trying to compare them.
Well, because this is the thing,
I'm trying to think of a price.
When you talk about Joe is a legit man corner. Richard Sherman, we know, is cover 3. That's what we said. Well, he could transition to safety. He can do that. Cool. With Steven, we're trying to figure out, are you more, you legit man, or is it more of you his own guy? Like, because we obviously saw a little bit of a mix with him, right? It's depending on who was matched up with. We're not going to name the people that he struggled with, but we know just, it's a little different at times. But with Joe being a true man corner, teams love that. Teams put a premium on that. That's a true man cover is like a true, bookend or franchise edge rusher. Like, you want those guys. You'll take more chances on paying them, even if they're older.
Maybe got the out treatment or something like that.
Right, because you're just like, yo, I've seen it enough. I feel like it's still something in there. And I think that's why if Joe was available, he would have gotten paid he would have got paid more than what Steven got.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I'm the Steelers, $5 million max probably.
That's gonna be
I think I need an out too after the 2022 season, so it's essentially a 1-year deal or 1-year extension.
So Joe to go from 11 to 5 and still be the number 2 corner though.
Well, we were talking about his market for this offseason. You got to think it's going to go down a little bit next offseason, just adding another year in age. Yeah. I'm good with doing it because I think he could still play good. Just you don't want the price tag to be too high, especially with all the cap space we have. We got to sign TJ, Minka, and all that.
And we know we're going to get more cap too, but it's just the part that we got to wait. We don't like if the Steelers didn't have that rule of it has to be done before the season starts, then you can have that luxury of, well, why don't we just wait till mid-season, see where the team is at, see how Ben looks, see how TJ looks, and then we decide who we want to extend and who we don't want to extend. But with the self-imposed deadline, which I'm fine with. If you're going to make a deadline and you stick by it, stick by it. We all understand it and we just, we adjust to that.
Yeah.
But with that being the case, you do create new situations, right? So granted, you don't have to deal with the distractions in season because negotiating in season can be a distraction. Negotiations in general, it gets testy because you're trying to get me for cheap. I'm trying to get myself for as much as I can get.
While you're trying to play.
Exactly. And things will be said. So you imagine if me and Deke are in negotiations, he tells me, look, man, I don't see you as no starter out here. I'm going to pay you backup money. And then you want me to go out here and practice with the starters? How do you think I'm going to feel? That's why they don't want you to negotiate during the season. I totally understand it, man. Totally can. But that creates this situation we're in right now, man.
There is another cost, though, potentially, because if Joe Haden's out in the field, one of our younger cornerbacks may not be out on the field too.
Yes,
if
indeed.
you feel really highly about Cam Sutton or James Pierre, you could be hurting their development a little bit for an aging Joe Haden. Now, if Joe Haden's still playing at a really good level, it's worth it, especially if you're getting him for that $4 or $5 million, and we're in contention. Those are things to consider. It's tough that the decision will probably have to be made in these next couple weeks.
Yeah.
Because you're playing a guessing game, but that's what these contracts are essentially.
Definitely, man. Definitely.
So if I'm a betting man, if I'm the one making the decisions, no more than 5, and I think I need an out after the 2022 season.
You know what? I dropped the ball on this. We're gonna ask the chat.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
Would you?
I'm just saying, should the Steelers extend Joe? Yeah.
And then you could put in the comments how many years, what the price. You think he'll still be elite? Will he make a Pro Bowl this year? Like
should
all this type of stuff.
Should the Steelers extend Joe Haden? Question mark.
What would you do?
Give me 1 second, and I will share with you what I would do. Ask your community. That's what it says. Ask your community.
Shout out to the community.
Yes. Shout out to the community. Good call right there, Deke. Good call. And while they're going through this poll real quick, let's see. Would I extend Joe? Well, I'm biased. So I'm going to have to answer it twice. If I'm me, Arthur Moats, I'm extending Joe. I love Joe. Joe's my guy. And I feel like Joe has been more than a proven commodity. He's been a breath of fresh air, as I've already highlighted, and he's still currently the best corner on the team. The speculation around Cam Sutton, James Pierre, and anybody else you want to name is still just speculation. Seeing them in practice, that's one thing. Seeing them doing it in a regular season game, that's a difference. And then not just one game, 17 games worth of it, and then repeat process. We've seen Joe do that countless times. So if it's me, I told you, I love to pay for proven productivity. I'm not a guy that loves to speculate on players or pay players based on what we think they can grow into. I want to wait till I see it, then I'll compensate it. But if you're the Steelers, you don't have that luxury. So if I'm the Steelers, and it really just goes back to how they feel about 7. So I'm going to lean that they still got hope for 7. With them still having hope. And the only reason I say is because based on what they have said since they've adjusted 7's contract, they have not shut that door on next season. And they're very specific when they use their wording about him as pertains to next season. So with that being the case, if he is in the ballpark of last year, he doesn't have to be better than last year, but if he's in the ballpark of last year, I do see a scenario where they try to bring him back. And if that is the case and you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you know that, then you go ahead and extend Joe now. You go ahead and take care of him on the front end, and you just kind of, you're going to take what you got right here and just hope that it works out, man. But
so actually, I want to sign Joe Haden.
Yeah.
I want to extend Joe Haden for 6 years.
God. You got to stop this, man.
No, but if you're saying if it potentially points to that, right?
No, that is because Ben is the driving force of whether we reset what we currently have or we go with what we currently have in terms of the next 2 to 3 years, because the core group is there offensively and defensively, right? When we talk about Najee, you talk about Claypool, Deontay, when we look on defense, Devin Bush, TJ Watt, Minka, all those core pieces and players are there. They're ready to go. But in terms of how you're going to proceed going forward, because we know those guys are about to start getting paid. Once they start getting paid, you can't have Ben getting what he's getting and those guys getting what they're getting. So something is going to have to break. Now, I know last time you said you would rather let TJ walk and keep Ben.
Yeah.
Not everybody feels like that, though. So that's the scenario where it will really get dicey, because if they want to keep 7 and keep going forward with him, well, how the heck are they going to be able to do 30 mil for TJ? All right, make sure we get Joe in that, 8 to 10 range. And then we know Minka's a year away. And then we're going to have to get this stuff. Like, that's not enough money. We ain't got enough of that.
Oh, Joe at 8 to 10. That's high for me. Would you be good with 8 to 10? Like, what would your number be?
I would love him at 7.
Okay.
I would love him at 7, but I think 8 or 9-ish is,
whoa.
Like I said, though, he's back to back 11. And you're still going to ask him to do the exact same thing. It's not like we tell either one of our corners to follow number 1 receivers. So with Joe coming back for 5, 6, 7, whatever it is, what in his responsibility is going to be any different than what he's done this year, what he's done last year, and what he's done the year before that?
I get what you're saying. It all depends.
I mean, everybody in the chat can tell you, like, we want money. Like, nobody wants to just work and get paid less.
No, you're right. But it just depends on how much he really does want to retire as a Steeler, because maybe he could get that money out on the open market then.
But
or just be willing to retire. Like that's what he's got to answer.
I could definitely, like, that's gonna be the part for me where I would want to see, like, if the Steelers say we're not gonna extend you, would he be willing a year from now to just be like, bump that? I'm cool retiring.
Like, it's like the Steelers offers at 5. He could go to Jacksonville for 9, though. Yeah. He could go to a bum team for, maybe not a bum team, but maybe just a place where he doesn't want to go to.
Very
true. He'd have to move his family and stuff. Maybe he just weighs those options that I want to retire.
Absolutely. That's interesting, though. All right, let's go see what this chat's talking about, man. Let's see, because I put up the poll. Let's see. Oh, should we extend, or should the Steelers extend Joe Haden? 154 votes currently right now. It's been up for 4 minutes and it says 82%. A whopping yes.